In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what draws behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Yes, 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 yes. Victory is never promised indeed, and the battle is upon one Dr. Thunder, one Dr. Sean Wallace, ladies and gentlemen, amongst other things. How's everybody doing? How is everybody doing? Today we're going to talk about what it takes to be in the spotlight, to be in the firing line, the eye of the hurricane when they come after you for reputational violence. How does one tackle that? How does one tackle that? We have one here, one Dr. Thunder here that seems to have been silenced with the duct tape over his mouth. Hopefully he's able to communicate with us in some fashion. Okay. He's allowed to play the drums still, apparently. He's been silenced, but they left a part of his black card with him, saying we're gonna let him play kick some rhythm at least.
But the other thing is that I don't have my basketball in here. I could shut up and dribble. I could do that too.
You could shut the hell up and dribble that ball, sir. All right. I don't pay you to talk. As a matter of fact, I don't pay you at all. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, I think that let's get right into this topic. For those of you whom have not heard, I think Dr. Thunder, what I would like for Dr. Thunder to do is if there's an excerpt out of this magazine article that you would like to read. Whom is it written by again?
It is written by Nicole Young.
It's written by Nicole Young, not Dr. J's daughter or something like that, right?
No.
No, okay. That would have been, because that would have been crazy.
Right.
Written by Nicole Young, ELLE magazine, My Brush with the Black Manosphere, I believe it's titled, right?
Yes.
And in there, you're featured, you're embroiled in controversy with all your salacious relationships and, shall we say, entanglements and mutual connections with the dark underworld of the Black Manosphere.
That's right. The what did she say? She said something in here. She thought that let's see, we're here. It was like the trolls I saw skulking around the edges of Black Twitter had jumped up from under their Technicolor bridges and wandered directly into my dating life. The sirens clanging in my head throughout this entire ordeal bleated out one word over and over again: incel.
Yeah, so which is great. It's a good thing. There's I want to start from your reaction and then from the personal side of things, but I can't help but with the image, with what you chose to read, there is a whole, well, now you know what it feels like, or that the feeling, okay, that she described is apt and it's real. And I like that she described her feeling. In other words, I don't think that even if she maybe we don't know her and we don't know, she might just be a very kind of mercenary writer, right? Maybe maybe she's just like, hey, I had to bang out an article, right? But what she kind of represents in terms of that feeling of having these trolls come at her is something that people, even on the other side, represent. When people talk about SJWs, for example, they do feel like people come out of the internet or came out of some weird college campus, and all of a sudden they're everywhere. They're in the HR departments, they're in their faces, and whatever it may be, right? So I think that this feeling is experienced on both sides, and that oh no, people should not be surprised anymore that all the trolls and all the SJWs have all come out from their Technicolor bridges or wherever else SJWs come out from on the other side and are attacking each other. But the feeling that you got when LAR shared this article with you, okay? LAR shared this article with you. Floor is yours. What exactly were the feelings? You've had some time to process now that you had about it, thoughts, whatnot.
Yeah, first Who Day, my Bengals. You see my poster. My Bengals made it to the big game.
All right.
Who Day. Yeah, when LAR sent me that article, honestly, my first response was, "Oh snap!" And then as I read the article and realized that it was total hogwash, and my name being mentioned was like totally out of context and all of that kind of stuff. It was poorly researched, sort of not worth the virtual paper it was written on, all of that sort of thing. And you do initially have the thought that, I wonder how this person could damage me.
What
You
else? I see.
you do have that thought does arise, but after having some more time and thinking about it some more, and it actually didn't take very much time. The money is in the controversy. So all this article did was grow my channel and cause folks that maybe they had intended to contact me for an interview or want to collaborate. It caused those folks to get more serious about that, and or made it. I mean, it's actually been a positive thing. I mean, I was on Mr. Palmer's show with Obsidian, and I've got an interview with Obsidian coming up. We're going to talk about it. I've been invited to a couple other platforms to discuss this issue. LAR had me on his channel. We discussed the issue, and it seems like it's folks are interested in it, so it's bringing more attention to my channel. So actually, it's actually been a pretty positive thing. If you can get sort of past the initial, everybody has I have a family to provide for. So everybody has that sort of initial like, oh snap, like what's going on here? But
Okay, so it takes a lot. Now let me, for the more average person, if we generalize a little bit more, you're saying that it helped, it brought attention to you. There's something else that people whom are not in the public eye to begin with in any fashion worry about, which is, take for example, they want to start some kind of a business, right? And they want to just put it on LinkedIn or advertise it somewhere. But they're worried that even, let's say, their employer or maybe their coworkers or their colleagues writ large in the LinkedIn verse might see something, say something. So one thing I tend to tell people is people don't really care that much um, to be scrutinizing you on your LinkedIn page, right? Like to the extent they're on LinkedIn, it's part of some ridiculous little routine that they have to, or something they have to do. Meanwhile, they're worried about all kinds of things that they're worried about. Why am I bringing this up? There's a certain kind of linkage here, which is if you post that particular ad on LinkedIn, you just see only the benefits, right? And that initial, little tingle you get about exposing yourself, right? Somehow is more times than not leads to positive outcomes. So far, you're on the same page on that.
Yeah.
And then we could,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Then how about the disasters though? Like, what exactly were you worried about? When can it go to the extent when somebody is oh, they have to kick this guy out because he's gonna lose his tenure or whatever because he's a misogynist.
Right. Right. In a particular brand of misogynist. Let's see here. Let me read the the particular verbiage. So within the Black Manosphere's fiefdom, there are many subgroups, rival influencers, competing philosophies, and myriad content creators. But each of them contain one common thread. A concerted, explicit disdain for Black women.
Mm-hmm. So they hit you with the misogyny noir.
Yeah,
Shout out
I
to
didn't know.
K.
You know
Polyman.
what? I didn't know that I could be understood so well by another person. When I read that, I was like, you know what? I have been struggling for the words. And you know what? That is a concerted, explicit disdain for Black women. They got me. They got you too, man. They got you too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they hit me with the misogyny noir. I typically go ahead and announce openly that, hey, I just said something that, oh, I know you're gonna call me a misogynist. Let me call myself a misogynist first. There's something about the preemptive strike which I'm gonna ask you there, okay? Because now we're shifting around. We started about your feelings. Your feelings were like, oh, danger. Your survival thing kicks in, right? You check, you see that you're getting the benefits of the positive sides. So that suggests a certain kind of, hey, weather the storm. Then there is the preemptive aspect, which is there something to be said about, okay, Barack Obama wrote the book about doing cocaine with Becky, by the way. That was like a I don't know which is more controversial, like but he put it out there, and he put certain other kinds of things out there, such that there's not going to be a month before the election story, just like it came out with George Bush about his DUI, right? So if Bush just came out with the DUI, if Joe Rogan, for example, in other words, here's the thing: if Joe Rogan in this little chart of mine is somewhere, he's peaking, like he's somewhere towards the top in terms of exposing himself and therefore being uncancelable.
Right.
What do you have to say about that tactic, about the preemptive thing, about going out there and just saying stuff anyways, so that you are not cancelable, as opposed to remaining silent out of fear? Does that ring a bell or strike a chord with you?
Yeah, it is a bit of a balancing act, because when you have the responsibility to provide for your family and people are relying on you and all that kind of stuff, that is a big deal. And so you have to weigh that against certain calculated risks, right? Now, the thing is that if the calculated risks work out, it'll end up being so much better for your family that the calculated risks, if they're the right risks, will end up being a good thing. It'll end up being positive. But if not, then you could end up not doing so well. I mean, look at what happened with Jordan Peterson. Okay. Now, Jordan Peterson, who is brilliant, has a distinguished career, and had a lot of content actually already on YouTube before, he was outed as some sort of transphobe or whatever. That put a jetpack on his back, and ended up being very positive. Now, was there no negative as associated with that? Of course there was some negative. But once you get to a certain altitude, you don't really care about that stuff because it doesn't affect your living. It doesn't affect, your day-to-day, your ability to feed yourself and your family, your ability to make the kind of financial moves and set up your kids and your grandkids and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't affect that. So, so what? But one thing that's interesting is because people are choosing to expose themselves. I mean, social media, it has this tendency of sort of alluring, of enticing you to sort of say more than you would say, or to show more than you would show, to say controversial things when maybe that's not necessarily your tendency. And I think what's going to happen is, as the social media continues to climb as far as its sort of ubiquity, I think what's going to happen is nobody will be cancelable because everybody's got everything out. I mean, so that, it's like, hey, I'm not going to really point out your stuff when I got something actually worse I did last week and I tweeted about it.
Yeah, so basically a collective lowering of what it means to be public and private. Because here's the thing, we do know that human beings are quite adaptive in terms of their cultural variability. So regardless of our personalities, you could have societies whereby I think it was described early by some traveler, like I think Georgian society, Southern Europe. The Northerners complain about Southern Europe in this way, where things are very public, right? People are just like having their family arguments in the middle of the town square. You can imagine the Italians doing this, right? This kind of a thing, right? So, point being, we can adjust different levels of like what's private versus what's public. We can change that, and you're just saying that over time it'll become like, oh, you want to talk about this smear? Well, everyone has got cameras on everyone now. That we're gonna just have to chill out on all the holier than thou, more or less, right? So we can get a little dirtier, Dr. Thunder. Is that what you're saying? Anyway.
Yeah, well, it's already gotten pretty dirty. I mean, this stuff.
I want to ask you about Jordan, though. You brought up Jordan Peterson.
Go ahead.
And in his particular case, one could say that the illness, not the illness of his wife, but his illness, was a consequence of, not direct, or a contributing factor to that was a certain amount of stress that he was going through due to this transformation of being kicked upstairs. So, however, I think it's a preventable suffering in that regard, in the sense that it would go, if this anti-Jordan Peterson handling of the situation argument will go, that he cared somewhat about that he was not enough of a scientist, not enough of a deterministic scientist to see that the chessboard is going to sort itself out in a certain way where those people that are screaming at you from over there, the game that they're playing is not the game you're playing, or you could play, or maybe you could try playing in that arena one night, but leave. I think Jordan Peterson's heart was in it. He was actually trying to reach out, you know, and he actually, the messed up thing is, he actually is that guy with the real genuine heart, Mr. Clinical Psychologist, trying to reach out, right? And it's guys like that suffer the most. A freaking mercenary bastard cat, kind of like me, where I put my cards on the table as to, you know, I'm sharing information, I like that, blah blah blah. But my heart, I'm not bleeding for you, sir, or people out there, the suffering masses. No, I'll bounce. But I think Jordan had his heart in it. What lessons can we learn from that? Is there a certain amount of take your heart out of certain things when it comes to the arena of controversy and smears that one needs to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be best for you not to have thin skin, as it were. You know, I think you could argue that that his illness, what happened to him, and then the addiction that he had with the beta blockers and all of that was related to his sort of all of the controversy. But I think more directly it was related to, the illness of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the combination of those two things was probably too much for him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I think having as they say, having a thick skin, and just being about something, having something else that you can focus on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in a lot of different things. Okay, so my day gig, I'm a tenured professor, I'm an academic, all that. I got outed in the article. I teach at Ohio State. I'm the director of jazz studies there. I've been there since 2004. It's the music thing. I love teaching. I love teaching students. I'm the professor of jazz saxophone. I've recruited a lot of really good saxophone players over the years, and that's something that I enjoy doing. But that barely scratches the surface of what my interests are. There's all kind of other things that I'm engaged in. I'm a church musician. I'm a touring musician. But I'm interested in philosophy and politics. I'm a social commentator. All the stuff I'm doing on YouTube, my conversation series, the podcasting and stuff. So I think keeping yourself sort of distracted, and I'm a husband and a father, right? And I think part of it comes down to one of these tools or these skills that I've discussed before on our show, and that is the whole being in the moment, being fully present. So I use my calendar as a way to promote being fully present. So if I account for all of the things that are necessary for me to do, if I account for those things, then when I'm during those time slots, I can be fully present. And so if I'm getting smeared in the media, or if Nicole Young decides she wants to, write another article, another poorly written, poorly researched, article, and decides to mention me again, I'm not even really thinking about that. Like I have other stuff to do.
Good. It reminds me of a certain kind of a visual that I have about, it's almost like you're going through these various meshes, right? Some are coarse, big, you can go through, others start chopping you up. But when they chop you up, the point is a similar size mesh comes through and you don't feel it anymore, right? So it's almost like you're prepared, like, oh, so I've gotten past my first article. Say, oh, I remember back then when my first smear piece, you know.
Right.
You know, now there's hundreds of them a week. What are you talking about? And the fact is, it's like Grant Cardone says, it's like, I want attention. I want to be called to go testify in front of the Senate, and not in a good way. I want to be like Mark Zuckerberg, where everyone's like scolding him. It's like, that's what happens when you're on the top, you know, that kind of thing, that idea that, look, you're going to need to go into it. I think is a repeating theme here. Now, tenure is something which you have alluded to, but you have not mentioned specifically. Tenure is something that helped you in this particular case. In terms of your commentary, you say you're a social commentator. Was it a planned thing, strategic thing, that I'm gonna go out there, get some tenure, wait a little bit, and then start saying certain things? When did the social commentary thing come about, and how did your freedom with your speech correlate with your obtaining of the tenure position?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's some wisdom about keeping your head down and your mouth closed while you're in pursuit of tenure. I was not particularly, and I'm gonna say this too. I don't really, you know, when I'm on campus, I just do my job. Matter of fact, I'm in meetings and stuff. I don't even say anything for the whole meeting. I'm just sitting in the corner, just, you know, just surveying and just looking and seeing what's happening. So I think that's actually really served me well. And, you know, if you're going to
speak on that a little bit more, how has that helped you? Because I think it's a practical tactic for most people to have. You said, okay, you've been kind of quiet. How has it helped you in this kind of area?
Well, what's the saying? He that speaks is a fool. He that does not speak is esteemed a man of understanding. You know, this sort of thing. And so then when you do finally speak, as long as you don't sound like a total idiot, it's going to be weighed more heavily. It has the potential of sounding more profound and sticking out in a positive way, right? So, you know, so my general policy is I only speak when it's necessary to speak. If it is not necessary for me to speak, I don't speak.
You climb regardless without speaking. And there's a point to this.
Right.
Because this is a political conversation. By political, I just mean, you know, Plato's Republic type politicking, meaning just human relations, right? So politicking your way up in an organization, and then politicking your response to media smears or dealing with the outside world, the public world, if you will, becoming a public intellectual social commentator, whatever it may be, right? So you're politicking going up while not doing a lot of speaking. And it's a certain storyline in my head that goes like this, because I use the same kind of tactic, more or less. And it's not that, you know, I'm not making my necessity a virtue here. And it's not by strategy that I end up just shutting up. It's because I just don't have the energy to talk. But what it ends up doing is, if you demonstrate competence, you're going to have an organic team around you of people whom you're serving, right? Because you always serve people internally and externally, right? Whether within your business or outside, you know, in the public, you're going to be giving people good quality stuff. You're going to get a reputation for yourself, all without you necessarily politicking, backslapping, speaking. Okay. And then you do have a certain kind of buffer around you where your reputation precedes you. What is the importance here of that kind of social group? The reason I gave you a group, even though you didn't say that you had one, because I know that when you keep quiet, but still you're climbing, there is a whole modality. There's not many ways in which that could work, but one is you are, through your competence, through reputation, building a certain kind of set of circles of people that are like, oh, he's a stand-up guy. Yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, I can always spot the folks that I should have certain kinds of relationships with, and not for any, uh, you know, plotting sort of reason do I befriend folks. It's all pretty intuitive, but I befriend, folks, and they tend to be the right kind of folks. Um, and I share necessary information. And now I have some allies. I don't criticize people publicly,
Hmm.
so I'm not making enemies. And you have to be see one of the things is you have to be good at what you do for this to work. You
Yep.
can't be a slum bum.
Hmm.
So you
Yeah.
still have to get your skills together.
Hmm.
You can't be a slum bum. You can't be green behind the ears, all that kind of crap. You have to really be really good at what you do. They have to want you. Because if they don't, and you already were a liability, as soon as some controversy arises, you're done. You're out
Hmm.
of there. They've been waiting to get rid of you.
Interesting. So, because what we're doing here is we've kind of left this whole I'm this particular node and I'm being attacked by the group, whatever. And now we're in the how does the controversy even begin? How can it even be tamped down before it gets to you? What are all these buffers? The castle, the moat, and then the forest with alligators in it. I don't know. I don't know what your system is, right? What are all these other layers? And they are in the space of in the social space. So if you have a team for you, ladies and gentlemen, or if you have a team against you, as Dr. Thunder just said, right? It doesn't really, it's not about the particular thing, particular excuse that they use to come after you, right? Oh, well, he got fired because of he didn't check box X 17 times, and we told him to check box X, and he didn't check it, so we fired him. It's like, no, that's not really the reason. Because if you're freaking good at what you do, they'll get rid of box X for you. Okay. They will move box X. They're like, box X doesn't freaking matter. Okay. He's kicking ass and taking names. And if you do that and the organization is not rotten, so rotten. So what you're saying is within academia, it's not so rotten yet that you cannot build this kind of organic, concentric set of circles in terms of allies through competence. You can still do that, in other words.
You can still do that, but I'm also here to tell you, especially at big schools like the school that I'm at, it is almost cripplingly political. Because there's big dollars that are being that are being distributed. If you have a school that has a huge endowment,
do you think you guys are poorly funded, underfunded? Do you think the money thing should be, in other words, would it be better if you just had the FU money? And would there be less tension? Would it be less political if you actually were better funded?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I actually think it would be. I think that there would be less political issues, because what tends to happen in the arts is there's in comparison to, and I'm not just talking about academia. I'm just talking about period.
Arts period. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, arts period. There tends to be less funding available, right? Uh, Certainly less funding available for like vanity projects,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that money is, uh, it's sought after. It is greatly desired, and so what I have seen is some of the worst displays of backhanded backstabbery, willing to throw folks under the bus, brown nosing, kissing butts, all of the sort of negative things that we associate with, playing politics. That stuff tends to be very present. Um, and but I've also noticed that in other disciplines and or music and or the arts that are funded well, there tends to be less of that. There just tends to be less of that squabbling and stuff because all of the stuff that they need is being taken care of. They don't have to sort of, act like they're on Survivor, and who am I supposed to be allies with? Because I don't want to be the cat that gets kicked off the island, you know. Yeah, it's less of that kind of stuff. Then you can just kind of focus on your discipline,
Okay. Okay. I see. So academia still has that. Now, there's something here that about the funding. Okay, because here's like, if we pull back a little bit, because one may say, what's going on? Are people just, because I remember I said she might be a mercenary writer. If there's such a category as mercenary writer, then there are other maybe systemic and structural ways in which one could look at this stuff. In other words, it might be bigger blocks of chess pieces, perhaps economically understood, right? Than to get more granular and psychological and perhaps pseudo political. So it's like, okay, if you were getting better funding as in the university, there will not be, or it seems to be the case, right? That if you have more funding, then you have more of that situation whereby competence will rise to the top. But if you're not getting enough funding, then there's going to need to be this sociological things going to come up. It's like, yeah, there's not a lot of food for the team. Okay, we're going to need to cannibalize our young, for example, something that tends to happen in academia in terms of like, both the doctorate students, what they're used as, by the institutions or used for, and then the fact that it's this pyramid scheme where you can't barely get a freaking professorship, not to mention tenure professorship, in terms of the numbers of PhDs that these same institutions are producing, while using the PhD students as, chattel slavery. So there's a certain kind of so I'm not saying for anyone that says, okay, but all the inflation in education, you say there should be more. No, all that inflation went to administrators and BS that doesn't have anything to do with anything, right? In my opinion, I'm just painting low resolution stuff from outside with somebody who has no idea what's going on within the institutions, but just a casual observer. This is the point of view of a casual observer, right? This is what I see in there, going on in there. And it will cause people, this set of perverse incentives, if you will cause people to manifest this kind of behavior, which you see. And I think that there's a bigger economic picture also writ large about this kind of a same pyramid scheme type thing. And I may have a video to play about this and see what you think, whereby people were promised a certain kind of thing. Take the American public, for example. Take MAGA country, for example. They were promised a certain kind of a thing since the 70s or whatever about this kind of continuous growth that will continue to happen, which was not real, blah, blah, blah. So what are your thoughts about appropriate funding, paying attention to the right kinds of things such that these institutions can be pristine again? Because if you have the money changers in the temple and say, okay, let me not go there, right? But you get my point.
Yeah, so there's several issues here. one of the issues is that, is it possible that the reason that funding for the arts seems to always be a struggle, maybe that's a sign, maybe the market is trying to say something. Okay. Now, now I'm not supposed to argue that way. I'm not supposed to raise that issue. One of the issues within academia, well, we'll talk about the conservatory model, schools of music. Historically, there's been this sort of issue between the European classical tradition and other traditions that are trying to sort of gain a foothold, in particular jazz, which until recently was treated quite a bit like a redheaded stepchild. Now though, it seems like it's more, being embraced a bit more, but still is never going to be embraced at the level that the music that the conservatory was designed to accommodate will, right? So there's a design flaw with respect to accommodating jazz, right? Now, yeah, and we can say there's some racist stuff and some stereotypes and some stuff that some undertones, overtones, whatever, of certain views about the music and it not being as serious and all this kind of thing. There's all of that kind of stuff that sort of travels. But, and here's my point, what I'm seeing, and I think that this in many ways was always a primary thing, but the racial stuff sort of made it hard to discern this. Really, the battle in these conservatories and schools of music is between art music, in other words, music that requires subsidy, and commercial music. Okay. So you have some folks that are battling to keep they realize that without
they want
this
their art music
institution,
money, and don't need you pop artists coming in here soaking up. You guys go out there in the marketplace and do your thing. Be capitalists and entrepreneurs. We art people need our sponsors, and that's how we've survived for time immemorial. And we set up these conservatories for these particular kinds of music. And of course, now you're going to look. One might then see or interpret in that story, as you mentioned, isms and ists and phobes and stuff like that. But it need not even be brought up because, as you say, it's with respect to jazz a design flaw. Not that they knew about. They were not trying to accommodate jazz when they started this thing to begin with, right? So
right. So it's
okay.
like we need this money. We need this subsidy. We need this structure to be this way. So all of this sort of advocating for changing it and making it different and make it accommodate these other things. I don't know.
You see, there's a person called Eric Weinstein that argues about, or he has a particular, he calls it ego, embedded growth obligation, which he uses as one of the broad brushes that he uses to paint from an economic standpoint, from a technocratic economic standpoint, what exactly is going on here. And that embedded growth obligation, whether it be, let's say, in Social Security, it will continue to grow, will continue to pay everyone, even though demographics play a huge deal in that, right? And once you say it, you're lying. And then the economy will continue to grow, so we'll fix the inflation numbers and how we actually measure certain things. There's certain, if you understand calculus, you understand that the economy does a certain thing where they're not using a more sophisticated kind of calculus to capture some variability, some actual variability in the marketplace, rather they're keeping the kind of standard, right? And the standard benefits certain stories. And this is all about the inability to meet that embedded growth obligation in instance after instance, would be in academia as we just described, or in, you know, hey, we need to start importing engineers from outside, and we're going to say Americans are not good at engineering. But it's like, no, we can't. We don't want to pay the American engineers. Okay, that's why we do it. That's why I did it.
Right,
but,
right,
but,
right.
But the story is like, oh, they're not good, and but this is again, there was a growth obligation. In order to meet it, you start doing certain kinds of things, and the people start handpicking each other, especially in places like academia and such, and it becomes about some. And then the people, the postmodern type stuff, whom are the most well armed when it comes to power games, because that's their whole theory, right? They tend to do quite well in this kind of a situation where it's like, oh, okay, there's no actual anymore, and there's a limited amount of stuff for us to fight for. Oh, power games, I got some stuff for you, right? So I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on there, but basically what I was saying is that there is an economic kind of embedded growth obligation, again, just one particular broad brush that he uses to kind of paint this whole thing that we're seeing, from SJWs to people lying about, you know, that globalization is good for you and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So I'm sort of I'm saying the same thing I was saying. I'm taking a different line on this. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, you have certain degrees that are being cranked out of certain programs within academia, that there is no way that the market can sustain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that there is not this embedded growth that you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically what you're doing is you are encouraging students to apply to your program. You may even be giving some scholarship money to entice them to make certain decisions about what degree program they're going to do once they come to your school, right? Mm-hmm. And then when all is said and done, they finish their degree, they go out to a market that it's like cutthroat trying to get a position in that field. There's not enough of those positions out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll tell you, at least within schools of music and conservatory and the conservatory models, with respect to music education, Bachelor of Music Education in particular,
mm-hmm.
That degree program, you can graduate with an actual certificate to teach, and my institution actually places close to 100% of those students in a job. Now that's great, but that's
Nicole Young actually might be a product of one of these things. Insofar as she is in academia, not academia, in journalism, the same story
Mm-hmm.
exists in the sense that it is hard to get, these institutions are broken down, right? Right. They couldn't, continue. They had to be taken down. Now you have people fighting to get some space in the limited, to get some clicks, and they have to do certain salacious type of things and speak a certain kind of language, right?
Absolutely.
All because they don't have, maybe they will be writing about Camus, if they were, they had blah, 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 right? That kind of a thing. But now they have to sit and come after Dr. Thunder. So goes this kind of argument. And that if we continue to fight, obviously you want to fight all these things at all these different levels, right? But to forget the big theft that is behind all of this, and all this, by the way, all that embedded growth stuff is papered over by federal government printing, right? The money printing. So it's that story, and also it not only you get SJWs to fight with MAGA country, you also get all kinds of groups and subgroups to fight amongst each other, while that whole story just goes on in the background, right?
Mm.
And we might forget that, look, there's something there. Now, and I think that you touch upon this in terms of, let's say, affirmative action. What do you think could be done to fix affirmative action in your point of view? Because you've talked about the problems with it that make it such that the people whom it was designed for, the people whose plight was used as a motive, right, or as as impetus for the masses to join in, are not getting the benefits. How could it be fixed in your point of view?
Yeah, so this is a tough issue, because even if you do become a beneficiary of affirmative action, say as a Black male, right, then there's this sort of stigma that follows you around as you're promoted on your job. Well, the only reason that person's here is because of affirmative action. The only reason that they got promoted is because of affirmative action. The only reason that they just became the president, the company, is because of affirmative action. If it hadn't been for affirmative action,
can you do that with a Southern accent? That'll even be better. Like,
right. Y'all. That's about the extent of my Southern. Y'all. I can say y'all. But yeah, so there's that aspect of it. As far as fixing it, I mean, really what destroyed from affirmative action is Title IX. I mean, if you can eliminate Title IX, then affirmative action would have been much more effective. But it's once you sort of added in other groups, to sort of fight over the already pretty small pot, then it diffused the effectiveness, of it. So
yeah, so it's like, and I know we're taking a tour down the economic lane here. Why? When we're talking about targeted by the media, ladies and gentlemen? Well, because I think that a lot of the things that go on in terms of this fighting that's going on is truly fighting about money or resources, which is not a big surprise. A lot of times people kind of hide in your regular life anyways. It's usually about what's behind a lot of enmity, usually stems from some kind of scarcity mentality. So if we continue down on this line of, people not being able to succeed, therefore they start to nitpick and fight each other. If you look at the traditional left, by traditional left, I'm just just picking out that, I'm just using that term to kind of explain what I'm about to explain. In terms of work boots, right, and getting that guy his pensions, and making sure he's able to, that kind of a thing. They cannot deliver on that anymore. And again, this is not some kind of a look at them. It's like, no, it's the same for the same economic reasons, right? But how can we still okay, we can't deliver on this stuff. We can't talk meat and potatoes with them anymore. We have no meat and potatoes for them, but we need them in our camp. Oh, let's take the alienation aspect of Marxism, which is also true. The whole point of all these things is that a big part of the substrate of the analysis is true. That's not the point. So let's take that alienation thing and let's start using this particular identity versus that other identity, rather than say, hey, we all need a chicken in every pot, right? You can't deliver on the chickens anymore. So you start telling people, oh, look at the way that guy is using look at that headdress they're wearing. Isn't that from your people? Isn't that a microaggression? And then you can still keep the people in your camp, right? So that would, it's still on this same kind of economic backdrop. This story is explained that way, that even this kind of identity politics is a result of not really having meat and potatoes for the people. Would you agree with that, or is it too far flung for you?
No. That's not too far flung for me. I'm with that.
Mm-hmm. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have talked about this whole tenure thing, but still you haven't, I don't think you answered directly whether or not it was a plan of yours.
Yeah. So, one of the attractive things about academia, about teaching, is the prospect of tenure. I mean, just think. You get tenure, and unless you break the law, the federal law in particular. So unless you break the law, unless your area disappears. Okay. So say for instance, we're not doing jazz anymore. And it would have to be more than that. It would have to be the School of Music is imploding. It no longer exists. We don't have a place where you can work anymore. So you could lose your job that way, right? Mm-hmm. But that's highly unlikely, especially if an institution is of a certain size. So just imagine being able to go where the research leads, say what you want to say, if it's convenient, inconvenient, if it's against the orthodoxy or not. Just consider this. Say if everybody you work with are all flat earth folks. They believe the earth is flat, and all of the prevailing science and information suggests that the earth indeed is flat. But you come along and you question that. And you're able to develop a methodology and approach to measure certain things in a way that suggests to you that the earth is actually spherical. Now, you're going to take a lot of heat for that, right? A lot of jokes cracked at your expense, but they can't fire you. Right? They got to keep you around. See, this is the benefit of tenure. Now, some of these institutions have gotten very clever, though, and they have found ways to push you out. They can make your jobs untenable. They can, take away support from your, say, for instance, if part of your job requires a particular healthy amount of funding for a lab, mm-hmm. they can just kind of dry up the money. The money doesn't exist anymore. We hit our times, and maybe that lab is a critical component of your research, right? So that's a way. Mm-hmm. That's a way that they could encourage you to keep it pushing. They can blackball you amongst other institutions and other institutions. And this particular article, that was actually a clever strategy. I don't know that she necessarily thought of it this way, but a clever strategy to use against a tenured professor is to cite the institution, put their legal name in there. You can mention even that they have tenure. But by doing that, say for instance, if there were other institutions that I was applying for positions at, because I wanted to, as we have said before, apply leverage. So, you get the job offer, you use that as leverage against your current institution to get paid more, or you just decide you want to go to the other position, right? That is a regular thing that academics do, that people in all kinds of jobs do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you've actually done, what you think you did, is you cut off those possibilities. And that could actually damage somebody. Even if they have tenure, it could actually damage them as far as their ability to leverage their skills for a raise. But yeah, I mean, I had a plan. I looked at academia and I was like, look, I'm going to get these degrees that I need, and I'm going to go after a tenure track position, and then I'm going to sell out, do whatever I have to do to get tenure. And then after I got tenure, it's not necessary for you to be so guarded about what you think, what you say, right? Because now you don't have a committee in voting on your tenure case. At my institution, tenure is a matter of up or out. You either get promoted to tenure within a finite amount of time, or you got to find another job. All institutions aren't necessarily that way. You could have more time to get tenure. You could fail multiple attempts and then finally get tenure. That's not how it works at the institution I'm at. Up or out. If you don't get it, peace out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of stress associated with trying to get tenure. But once you get it, then it facilitates stuff like, maybe I don't have FU money, but I have FU tenure.
It was that was exactly the analogy I was gonna, because that's the two. It truly is the two sides of it. It's like Elon Musk has tenure, for example, right? He went the other way, right? Mm-hmm. There's another guy, Stephen Wolfram, and this happens. The story in the, shall we say, the physics/engineering side of things is there's always I could just go over here, write the Wolfram Alpha program, become a billionaire, fly in my private jet all over the place while still make good contributions to the field of math and physics. I'm going to go that way, right? And then there are the other ones whom try to fight it out in academia and deal with all the sociological and political things, because these are institutions after all, right? And then there's some people who stay in the middle, right? Whom try to, I'm going to try to put one foot in the commercial world, one foot outside of it. Now, FU money is the thing that allows you to be that child again. Same thing is, tenure was instituted for that. The people whom are most worthy of remaining children, right? In other words, being free to express and explore, they need a particular category for the society to be healthy, is the point, right? Now, it's even shaky in the tenure land. Well, maybe not shaky, but what I'm saying is, outside you guys, this castle and your little moat out there, I think inside the forest already is the economic truth, which is, and then all that inflated stuff in terms of the administration, the buildings, and the dormitories for attracting the students, right? All that stuff, as opposed to giving the physicists and the jazz musicians and the math, the jazz math people, right? We gotta Gotta teach you special math now. And the jazz,
right, jazz
the
math.
jazz math people. But anyways, I'm rambling now. But I was just kind of closing.
I don't know if I should be offended by that.
You still haven't decided.
I don't know. It's like
okay. Well, if they don't build you, they can't destroy you. How does that strike you? As we start to wind down now, there's the idea.
Oh,
of,
yeah.
you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. If they don't build you, then they can't destroy you. That's absolutely facts. And you know, I enjoy what I do. You know, teaching, I'd be teaching something. If I wasn't teaching music, I'd be teaching something. You know, that's who I am as a teacher. My discipline, my skill is music, but my motivation is teaching. And so academia is a perfect place for me. Even given a lot of the, you know, political stuff that I don't care for, and some of the reason that I don't care for that is, you know, I'm introverted, and I don't want to be bothered by that kind of stuff for the most part. I realize it's stuff that you have to deal with, and it's just being an adult, really. I mean, if you're going to deal with people, you're going to deal with politics. That's just part of it.
Adulting.
That's adulting, right? right. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy the folks that I work with. You know, I was given an opportunity to develop a program in the way that I thought it should be ran, and that's what I wanted when I came to the school I work at. That's what I wanted. And you know, it wasn't without, you know, some struggling and things, but hey, that's how this works. But
I have a
yeah.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, I think that okay, so the reason that my institution wanted me was because I had a certain set of skills. Okay. I had experience. I had a certain set of skills. They believed that they would be able to make money if I came to the school, that I would be able to attract students. That's why they wanted me. Okay. They wouldn't have, you know, they wouldn't have given me the job and then given me tenure if they didn't think that financially they were going to be doing well if I stuck, you know, if I was there, I'm sorry, if I was there, you know, things are going to go worse, you know, or something. That wouldn't be the reason that they would keep me, right? Promote me and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of goes back again to, you have to actually be good at something. You know, in my all my sort of short bio stuff, the stuff that's on YouTube, on my social media and stuff, it says musician, professor, social commentator. And that's the order. That is the order. The music, the music, it facilitated the professorship. And the tenure due to professorship put me in a situation where I could express my views without the fear of getting fired because I said something that, you know, folks, you know, have an issue with. So, yeah.
So let's give Jordan Peterson his due. Oh, what I mean is, let's give that the kind heart its due. So if Jordan Peterson, the way Jordan will deal with this, or would, or one thing he would do, right, is if he had Nicole Young in front of him, was to continue that conversation that we had about her vision of the Technicolor bridges with the trolls coming over at her. That if we were to grant that, that yes, that is what you feel like right now, right? And perhaps taking this radical ownership perspective of what could I have done, or what did you see in me, or what could I have done, or not in any kind of a place to kind of beat yourself up, but for the psychologist in one, right? Can you do that kind of empathizing, sympathizing, psychoanalyzing with her from a non-ironic point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any reason to dislike Nicole Young. I'm not mad at Nicole Young. I'm not mad at Nicole Young. I was a little annoyed at first, but she's just doing her job, and she's just doing what she thinks she needs to do to move herself forward. Okay, that's fine. Maybe the next time she makes this attempt, she'll research better. And maybe she'll sit down with more folks from this space that she has categorized again as, let's see here, each of them contain one common thread. A concerted, explicit disdain for Black women. Maybe she'll do more research that will show that statement is categorically false.
Okay, so here's the deal. What's the nature of its falseness, sir? If in an area I see criticism of Black women, and again, this has nothing to do with arguments or anything. In the feelings land, I look over there and there's criticism, whether it's shout out to Minister Jab, the German Shepherds, and over here and over there, and the TikTok clips, and Kevin Samuels then goes viral with, there's this video, there's something called Average at Best. What I see is that, so is there not at least low resolution truth to what I'm saying? Or is what I'm saying completely off base? Perhaps I should have done more research, sir. But for the is there any basis in what I just said, for example?
So I did a live stream earlier today. What was the name of it? He chastises whom he loves. He chastises whom he loves. And in that, I quoted the passage of scripture in Hebrews chapter 12, where it talks about how God will punish those he loves. He will scourge those that he has received, right?
Yeah, it also sounds like something Joseph Stalin would quote, though.
Right.
Stalin's like, oh, okay. This is why I'm burning you, by the way. Anyways.
But, the point is that it seems to me that if someone just makes some insults every once in a while, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But if there is consistent sort of criticism on particular topics, not just any old thing, but really specific topics, the same sorts of topics, the same sorts of attributes, it seems to me that that's more of a signal of actually the opposite of disdain. I think most of the and even the loudest voices, even ones that are saying maybe very harsh, critical, hard to hear kind of things, maybe you don't like the delivery. Maybe you're, taken aback that somebody is even willing to say that, given a particular prevailing narrative. Okay, maybe that's the case, but it seems to me that it's more an indication of love than it is an indication of disdain.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you continue to say these things? Why do you continue to have these conversations? Why are the same topics arising over and over? And they don't even have to be 100% right about what they're saying. And they could be missing all of the nuance.
Mm-hmm.
It still seems to me, based on the principle that tough love is the real love, not this patting you on the back, pumping your head full of all of these positive affirmations. You can do it. Everybody can have a trophy. That is not a sign of love. Actually, put forth by the Bible, that's actually a sign of actual disdain. So, if nobody was saying anything because you weren't even worth it enough for them to spend any time discussing this, anything about it, that would be more of a sign of disdain than I think what in mass messaging that you hear from the Black manosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, I'm not excusing certain things that get said by whoever it is. I'm not excusing everything. I'm not saying everything is okay to say. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you like what's being said or not, you cannot. I don't think it's a very astute sort of evaluation in summation to just say that there's a concerted, explicit disdain for Black women. That is the thing, that the takeaway. So it seems to me that what's taking place in mass, for the most part, even by folks that just got their heart broke, by folks that just just discovered they were getting cheated on, or or are being taken through the cleaners, the court, the folks that lose everything and are living in their car, all even scenarios like that where they have really edgy and stuff to say. It still seems to me that it's more of an indication of actual love than it is an indication of disdain.
I like that point of view there. It's however self-justifying it seems to be. The other point of view.
Take this punishment. It's only because I love you.
Or you could just pull out from the whole thing and say, look, this person looks at me doing something regular and ascribes the term hyper to it, or ascribes the term firebrand to it, the descriptor, right? This hyper masculine space. Well, could it just be a masculine space? What's so hyper masculine about this? It's not, but you get the idea, right? So obviously there is already there's a whole backlog. There's at least one library of books that forms a backdrop by which they're doing their quote unquote evaluation, as you put it, right? And then you're going to call something hyper masculine, and you're going to call people incels right off the bat, and then you're going to do certain kinds of things, and that's going to be the story. But I think that it's been a good takeaway here in the sense that
Uh,
go ahead.
Have you heard the term? Because she, in the same passage here, let's see here, she's talking about incel, and continuing on, she says, "For months, I had seen similar words and themes being used on social media, on Twitter. Men that wield a particular animus against black women are sometimes derogatively called nig cells."
I haven't
Now,
heard
is
that
that a
one.
term? Is that a term that you've heard?
I haven't heard that one, but that's not bad actually. If she came up, if she came up with that, good one on her.
Right.
If that's maybe like an obscure little starting, in a little corner somewhere about, oh, no, these are Nick sales for the misogynoir. This is the you could be a misogynoir. That's the high end version of it, or you're a Nick sale. That's a Twitter version of it. So I haven't heard it before. No.
Yeah, but again, the sirens clanging in my head throughout this entire ordeal bleated out one word over and over again: incel. Right. So the assessment that all this stuff that they're saying, this has got to be hogwash. It's got to be, guys that live in the basement of their, their mother's house, that play video games all day. They have Cheeto dust on their shirt.
And the funny thing is, I don't know. The funny thing is, in a weird way, I think that if it were those guys, then they will be more legitimate even, or the message should even be more legitimate. There's a certain twist of logic there into the land of absurdity that makes me like that. But is there any sense to what I just said there? That basically you trying to say, hey, you can only have a certain, you have to have a suit and a tie, 3 bank accounts, and such for whatever complaint you have to be valid. Meanwhile, if you're in the basement, oh, we don't talk to basement dwellers, right? And it's like, no, the basement dwellers are the people you should be listening to, especially about these kinds of things, right? It's like, you get the point, I guess.
Are you suggesting that that they would be providing this sort of extreme version of the thing, and then is that what you mean?
Real life experience and suffering is part of it. I think that to belittle that, right? Because indeed it is suffering. You're not belittling it because they're criminals. They were proven to be criminals. It's like you're belittling it because exactly of it is suffering, right? And you're saying only the people whom are not suffering should be able to speak anyways, right? Which we're now buying and saying, oh, we're not incels and we're not this and that. And I'm just like, no, it is BS to get into that whole. Don't play that board game. That board game is a whole trick.
I will say that it may be the first time. It definitely is an article in a magazine like this that they have mentioned me as an influencer. She says Dr. Sean Thunder Wallace, a tenured professor at the Ohio State University, is an influencer whose work teeters at the edge of the manosphere, beckoning in black men who might want to explore further.
You're like
I'm a plant,
crazy
y'all.
guy with candy, giving it to the kids to take it into his creepy van. Right?
That's right.
You're out there just luring. I figure you're like a ghoul floating around the borders of the manosphere, or teetering around the edges, telling people, hey, it's cool. Come over here.
That's right. It's okay in here. I know it looks bad. But it's okay. Once you get past, you get a little bit further in. It's nice.
Yeah, but I do find that whole thing rather ridiculous. The whole, you're gonna put someone down and this is supposed to be a democracy, right? In other words, look, my favorite word, right? Hierarchy stuff. Like, If you want to climb on your great white horse and lift up your big sword and give me a speech about how you're the conqueror of the universe, right? I'm actually willing to listen to you. See maybe this is the cat. You know what I'm saying, Dr. Thunder? Maybe this is the cat we've all been waiting for. Let's hear him out. Let's see his resume, right? That kind of a thing. But this other idea of I'm gonna just step down on people, they're beneath, they're the basket of deplorables, to use another term, right? There's something rather silly about it that I don't care what other side of the political aisle you're on. When it comes down to ideas up to the level where you're writing now, right, in the magazine, you leave the whole whether smears and stuff. But these are not. She doesn't write in the Hoover Institution, for example, with Thomas Sowell and the rest of them, right? So I guess this is your entry level type smear, and you're waiting for the big guns now. You're waiting for people from the Manhattan Institute and some of the think tanks over there to start training their guns at you. That's when you know you're arriving, right?
That's right. That's right. You know, this makes it all worth it. This makes it all worth it.
This makes it all worth it. Not to be, but you guys. Indeed. Yes, and let's land the plane. Let's land the plane, okay?
Sure.
So I think that from the very beginning, I started out with your reaction to this article, right? Your reaction to this article. And you said that, hey, you felt bad about it. You looked at the whole defense and how could they come for you? How could they come for you, hit you in the reputation, in the wallet, in the position, whatever it may be. You got to provide for your family and all that kind of stuff. And then you ended up seeing that, you know what? It actually got redounded to your benefit. Part of what made this possible was your tenure thing. It's a special kind of thing, but in talking about tenure, we were able to unearth certain grand economic, shall we say, backstories to this whole thing about the fact that there's a embedded growth obligation, something that I got from Eric Weinstein, right? That has been promised. In other words, a pyramid scheme has been going on, right? And we've been printing money to try to do that. And we see kind of weird behaviors in many different places, including in academia where people are fighting over limited resources, leading to all these kinds of behavior. Journalists not being able to work, so they have to write kind of smeary stories like this kind of stuff, right? And then, but we're still able to give people examples of basically you need to go into the controversy. You can preempt the controversy by simply talking about yourself. And then if you look down into the trend, technological trend that is going on, there's going to be a point whereby the whole idea of what is considered a smear, what is considered privacy will be gone. Everyone's going to know everyone else's dirt. So little dirt is not going to be a problem anymore, right? Oh, you said this one thing one time and this, like, well, that's just normal. It's on everyone's little dirt is on the internet now. Everyone now has a picture of them sitting on the toilet bowl or something, that becomes our new standard. Even the toilet is not private anymore. But anyways, overall, though, I think that the idea is the future is moving in that direction of you're going to be exposed. So you best grab a hold of the narrative yourself to the degree which you can. Put yourself out there first. If they don't build you, they cannot destroy you. What are your last words?
Yes, absolutely. It's the first of the month, so I know folks have some pocket change they can throw in here, some super chats. We'll take your EBT, we'll give you half cash value for your food stamps.
Yeah, and Leroy, you can email a money order. Leroy keeps complaining about not wanting to put his card information.
That's right.
He's got to buy a money order from the liquor store and then mail it over. But
yeah, we'll take wire transfers. All that old stuff they don't actually do anymore. Here, I'll put my pager number in the chat. Okay. Anyhow, two-way Sky pager though. So
two-way Sky pager.
Two-way sky pager. So yeah, I mean, great show. Um, thanks for the support, everybody. It's been very cool. A lot of the comments, a lot of supportive comments I've been getting on my videos. Folks are watching the content, gaining subscribers. All of that stuff is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for the support, and don't worry about me. I'm going to be okay. And I'll be back here next week with Ike getting this done. Also, we have a show on Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time called Case Closed. It's actually what's been playing behind me. This past Sunday, it was on my channel. It was a great conversation about Black-owned businesses, and I've got an interview with Mumia Obsidian Ali that should be premiering on Thursday at 10 a.m. So I'm looking forward to that interview. We'll be talking probably a little bit about this article. I think we've kind of kicked this to death at this point. But probably talked a little bit about that. But we'll also be talking about his book. We'll be talking about his book, which, remember, was a bestseller on Amazon.
So I'm assuming you've read up on it, and or at least skimmed through it. And what are your any impressions? You can write a little blurb about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he makes the usual points that he makes in his in his online commentary, on his shows. Whenever I've seen him as guest on other shows, some of the points that he made during our first interview that we did on Conversations with Dr. Thunder. But he talks about the 80-20 rule, and he talks about the sort of plight of the short man. He even mentions something about do shorter men make better husbands? Which is interesting.
Doesn't he have like 10 commandments at the end or something like that?
Yeah. I think it's an important book, especially for folks that I just think it's an important book, period. I think it does a good job of sort of laying out a lot of the primary issues that modern men, that is men in the modern era, face in the dating market. Yep.
All right. Case closed, and also back next week on the same time, same channel. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, I think Dr. Thunder is going to continue to weather the storm, and he is yet to completely reap the benefits of this his first encounter with the pen. The pen has been pulled out of the sheath.
I'm here for the smoke.
And blood will be drawn, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.
Yeah, I'm here for the smoke. Oh, I did forget to say, Thunder's Thoughts on Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be talking about this latest cancel attempt, this cancellation of Joe Rogan. We'll be talking a little bit about that. It's going to be good conversation.
In
in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity, tomorrow never certain. What draws behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble from LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.